Millions of Americans might be facing a smaller food stamp benefit going into the holidays. Joining us on 710 KURV, former chief economist of the U.S. Department of Labor. We welcome back to the show, Diana Furchtgott Roth. Deanna, welcome back. How you been?
It's great to be with you. Thank
so
you.
The war on drugs, a failure. The war on terrorism, definitely an overreach. And the war on poverty seems like it has failed, only creating more poor. There was a recent write-up I saw. We spent over $3 trillion in over several years on food stamp, on the food stamp program. It seems to be getting even bigger and bigger all the time. So how do we rethink this? What's plan B, Diana?
Well, I think in 2009, the amount spent on food stamps, the amount of food stamps given to individuals was expanded. Some of the eligibility requirements were changed. People could go on food stamps for longer periods of time. And it's very, very important that we have that safety net there when we are in a recession. But then that expanded eligibility and the expanded amounts were not rolled back when the recession ended. So what we have is 47 million people on food stamps. And it's natural that Congress does want to cut this back and make sure it's focused on those who are truly in need. I think that the ultimate solution, the best solution, would be devolving this program to the states, because it's very difficult for Washington, D.C. to know what people in individual cities in Texas need.
Yeah, because you say that because it is, in the end, a local social worker that needs to determine case by case the need of families or individuals.
Well, I think that the state and the county find it much easier to determine that, and then they will make sure there isn't any waste and fraud in the program if they have an incentive to keep what is left over. So right now, states are just falling over themselves to try to get that food stamp money from Washington, D.C., because they get that share of the funds.
This rollback, this cutback going into the holidays, what is this? Is this something that was previously scheduled, or is this something that lawmakers still need to vote on?
Well, it's basically a matter of a certain amount of food stamps being allocated for the end of the year. And lawmakers are going to be voting on the budget, and a cut in food stamps is part of that budget. Personally, I think that after 4 years after the beginning of the recovery, 4 years into the recovery, it is time to dial back on that food stamp program.
Senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research, Diana Furchtgott Roth, our guest on 710 KURV.
Diana, Tim Sullivan here. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
There seems to be, among some, this political philosophy that the federal government should not be involved in programs like this. But then that assumes, individuals and charities will be responsible for providing all of those who are needy and short of food. And come on, that is just not realistic. That's not going to happen. That's not going to be enough to help everybody out who needs it.
No, we spend billions of dollars on food stamps every year. We are talking about a small adjustment in the food stamp program, and no one is suggesting eliminating it.
But people are still going to be going hungry as a result of these cutbacks. You can't deny that.
I think that that's unclear. I think it's
really
there are stories.
Where do you get that information, Tim? That
well,
people are going to go hungry as a result of this.
I think you'll see the lines at the food banks getting quite a bit longer if this happens.
There are stories of people selling food stamps. There are stories of people buying food with the food stamps and sending it overseas. It used to be that there was limits for able-bodied adults on food stamps of about 3 months. They've taken off those limits.
But what makes you think that states and counties are going to be able to afford this sort of thing? If you don't think the federal government should, how are states and counties and cities, how are they going to afford it?
Yes,
they don't have the budget for this sort of thing.
Yes. What I'm proposing is that the federal government give the money to the states and the states allocate it to make sure that it's allocated in the most efficient way. I'm not suggesting that the federal government eliminate the program and that the states and counties take it on themselves out of completely new funds. Just as, for example, with the gas tax, all the money from the gas tax all over the country goes to Washington, and then Washington gives it back to the states with strings attached on what they can spend it on. I'm suggesting that Washington give the money to the states, and the states decide how to allocate it for food stamps among their residents.
Deanna, thanks for your time.
Hope you're right that works.
Deanna Furchtgott Roth, former chief economist of the U.S. Department of Labor and a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, joining us on 710 KURV.